Welcome back. So far on this channel, we have talked about why this channel exists. We have talked about what the Bible actually is and how it got to us. And we have talked about how to read the Bible the right way, reading around verses, understanding what kind of writing you are looking at, and being honest when something is not clear. Today, we finally open the Bible together. And the question is, where do we start? The Bible has 66 books. You could start anywhere, but I want to start in a place that I think will give us the clearest picture of the most important question in the entire Bible. And that question is this: who is Jesus? Not who your pastor says he is, not who your church tradition says he is, but who does the Bible itself say he is? What did Jesus say about himself? What did the people around him see and experience? That is why we are starting with the Gospel of John. But before we read, let me tell you a little about this book. The Gospel of John is one of four Gospels in the New Testament. The word Gospel simply means good news. The four Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are for accounts of the life, teachings, death, and resurrection of Jesus. They were written by four different people from four different perspectives, and they are not identical. They each emphasize different things, and they each have their own personality. John's Gospel is unique. If you read Matthew, Mark, and Luke, you will notice they share a lot of the same stories, sometimes almost word for word, but John is different. John includes stories and conversations that the other three Gospels don't have. John goes deeper into who Jesus is, not just what he did, but what he said about himself. John is less interested in giving you a timeline of events and more interested in helping you understand the meaning behind those events. Most scholars believe John was written later than the other three Gospels, probably somewhere around 90 AD, which is about 60 years after Jesus died and rose again. The writer had had a long time to think about everything he witnessed, and what he wrote is one of the most powerful documents in human history. John was also one of the 12 disciples. He was there. He walked with Jesus, ate with Jesus, listened to Jesus teach, and watched Jesus die, and then he watched him come back. So when John writes, he is not telling you something he heard from someone else. He is telling you what he personally saw and experienced. Now let's open the book. Let's look at how John begins. John chapter 1, verse 1. And I want you to really pay attention to this because John does not begin the way you might expect. He does not start with the birth of Jesus. He does not start with the family background of Jesus. He starts like this: in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Now, if you have heard that verse before, you might have just nodded along, but let's slow down and actually think about what John is saying here. In the beginning, where have you heard those words before? Genesis chapter 1 verse 1, the very first words of the entire Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. John is deliberately starting his book with the same words. He is pointing you back to the very start of everything. He is saying, what I am about to tell you is not a small story. This is connected to the biggest story there is. Then he says the word. In Greek, the original language of this book, the word used here is logos. Logos means word, but it also carries the idea of reason, meaning, and the force behind all things. John is using a word that both Jewish readers and Greek readers of his time would have immediately recognized as something very significant. He is saying there is a being, an intelligence, a presence that existed before everything else existed. And then he says this being was with God and also was God, both things at the same time, with God meaning separate, alongside, distinct, and also was God meaning one in nature, one in essence. Right there, in the very first verse, John is making one of the biggest claims in the entire Bible. He is saying Jesus, who he is about to tell us about, existed before the world was created, before time, before anything. Then we get to verse 14, and this is where it becomes very personal. John says the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. The Word, this eternal being that existed before everything, became flesh, became a human being, moved into our world, lived among ordinary people. John uses a word here that in the original Greek means something like, he pitched his tent among us, he set up camp with us, he didn't just visit from a distance, he came close, he became one of us. This is the central claim of the entire Christian faith, that God did not just speak from a distance or send instructions through messengers. He came himself in human form, with a body, with emotions, with hunger and tiredness and grief, and also with power and truth and a love that nobody had ever seen before. And John is saying, I was there, I saw it, I am telling you what I witnessed with my own eyes. Now let's skip forward a little to chapter 1 verse 29. This is where John the Baptist, not the same John who wrote this gospel, but another man also called John, sees Jesus coming toward him, and he says something extraordinary. He says, "Look, the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world." Now, to a Jewish person hearing those words, this was a very loaded statement. The lamb was a central image in Jewish worship and sacrifice going back hundreds of years. When God rescued the Israelites from Egypt, a lamb was sacrificed and its blood was put on the doorposts of their homes as a sign of protection. Every year at Passover, lambs were sacrificed in the temple. The lamb represented substitution, something innocent dying in the place of something guilty. So when John the Baptist calls Jesus the Lamb of God, he is not just giving him a nice name. He is making a statement about why Jesus came. He is saying, this man is the fulfillment of everything those sacrifices were pointing to. He is the real thing that all those years of rituals were a picture of. And he says he takes away the sin of the world, not just the sin of Israel, not just the sin of one group of people, the world, every person, every nation, every background. That is a massive statement, and it is right there in the text, in the first chapter. Let's look at one more moment in this first chapter, verse 35 to 39. Two of John the Baptist's followers hear him say that Jesus is the Lamb of God, and they immediately leave John and start following Jesus. Jesus turns around and sees them walking behind him, and he asks them a question, a very simple question. What do you want? They answer with their own question. They say, Rabbi, where are you staying? And Jesus says, come and see, come and see. Those three words might be the most important invitation in the entire Gospel of John. Jesus does not give them a lecture. He does not hand them a document to read or a set of rules to follow. He simply says, come and be with me, and you will see for yourself. And that is exactly the spirit of this channel. We are not here to be told what to think. We are here to come and see, to look at the text ourselves, to sit with it, to ask our questions, and to see what is actually there. So what have we seen in just this first chapter? We have seen John open his gospel by connecting Jesus to the very beginning of creation. We have seen him describe Jesus as the Word, an eternal being who existed before time and who entered our world as a human being. We have seen John the Baptist identify Jesus as the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And we have seen Jesus extend a simple open invitation, come and see, and we have barely started. The Gospel of John has 21 chapters, and almost every chapter contains a conversation, a miracle, or a statement from Jesus that will make you stop and think. We are going to go through this book together, slowly and carefully, the way it deserves to be read. In the next video, we are going to move into John chapter 2 and 3, where Jesus turns water into wine, and where he has one of the most famous conversations in the entire Bible with a man named Nicodemus. That conversation in chapter 3 contains what is probably the most quoted verse in all of Christianity, and when we read it in context, it becomes even more powerful than most people realize. If you are finding this journey helpful, share it with someone who is asking the same questions you are asking. Leave your thoughts and questions in the comments, and take your time with what we covered today. Read John chapter 1 for yourself, slowly, and see what stands out to you personally. I will see you in the next one.